FPGAs Ergo?
Okay, so that's a good question. Um, I get this question a lot from miners, right? You have this thing called a field programmable gate array, which is basically like a blank chip that you can custom design circuitry on, that can, potentially mine autolicos, right? And so there's a confusion between a field programmable gate array and an ASIC, right? An ASIC is basically a prefabricated chip that is designed for a single purpose, versus a field programmable gate array is a blank chip that you build the circuitry on, right? Now, if you look at the specialty, let's say in terms of manufacturing of field programmable gate arrays, I think really the only company, in the world right now that could probably build that at scale is going to be Xilnix, right? And Xilnix also has a backlog of I think a maximum order of 5 and let's say almost a year wait time. So they're very hard to actually source. And usually if you're going to, you need to buy quite a few, right? Now we're talking large, like data center type acquisitions. Now, in terms of a project, right? I think that if I were to just say, okay, guys, this is what I'm going to do, right? Number one, that's not very decentralized now, is it? Right? We do have governance that is basically given to the miners in Ergo, and I would hope that this is a continual discussion, beyond just fix it, guys, because the reality is, if we're going to be a decentralized network, let's not just pretend to be one and then have one dude who does everything, right? I think that is the dumbest approach to this industry that I see all the time. Like, if I
do something.
yeah, if I see it, I'm going to take my crown and say, we're going to fork, right? Like, that's pathetic. That's not decentralized. That's one dude in charge. The whole goal is to get the community engaged and have discussions. Now, we have a lot of factors to consider. Number one, these things are not widely available. Number two, they're highly expensive. And number three, we also have an algorithm where the mem table increases over time. And what that means is that as the mem table increases, it's going to overload that chip's capacity to potentially mine autolicos. And that's something that some of our big brains in the mining community certainly can spec out. They can say, okay, based on our mem table increase, this is the life expectancy of this particular chip. This is the cost of that chip. Is it economically viable, right? And what is the actual advantage in terms of the megahash per watts versus the cost, right? Because mining is a business where you're trying to ultimately become profitable. So there are a lot of good questions and discussions and debates and research to have. Unfortunately, in the mining community, it usually breaks down to these YouTube influencers that, their head's always on fire. I don't see a lot of intelligent discussion that's actually proactive. I just see reactive bullshit that's meant to get clicks and views. So it's something that I hope that the mining community takes a lot of responsibility for, because it's a good discussion to have. It really is. It's something that I would love to see the mining community take lead on, because we're a decentralized network. Now, we'll have to see. I do know that I imagine FPGAs are going to become more popular because they're useful in a lot of different industrial purposes, right? And it's hard to predict the advancement of that technology, right? So I hope it's an ongoing discussion that, in essence, never really stops, because it's something that we, should continually observe and understand and kind of evolve around as a community. Now, there is a downside. Let's say that I know there's one company that is coming out with, I think it's called the E300, which is a lot more optimized for Caspa than Ergo anyway. But what you would find, or what we have to ask is, okay, if we were to say, I'm the king and I'm just going to fork the network, which I can't do anyway. I think that's a dumb approach. What would that do to anyone that's running potentially smaller cards? It would kick them off the network, right? So if I had a 4 gigabyte card that was mining Ergo, we would basically be rugging that subset of miners. And so we have to have that debate or discussion as a community. Is it worth rugging a set of actors in our community to prevent a very small subset of people that are running chips that might not even economically make sense? That's something that takes critical thinking. I hope that the mining community will consider both sides of that, because the reality is I would like to see home miners supported. I would like to see the barrier of entry as low as possible, but I'm one guy, right? And the reality is, post-ETH, you do have a ton of very large farms with very cheap electricity that already exist, that are kind of either active or sidelined, that probably are going to come in at a profit advantage, even considering FPGAs, because they're probably already profitable and have paid off a lot of equipment just based on the history of mining ETH. So having your head on fire over some potential technology that gives someone a minor advantage, in my opinion, is stupid, looking at the broader mining environment where you have some entrenched, very large players that are coming in at a much larger advantage than even those particular FPGAs.
Yeah. Well, I also think that just in general, you touched on an important point here. There is, and this is actually a conversation that I had just yesterday about general Bitcoin mining, and specifically just and POW chains, Bitcoin, Ergo and other POW chains. And so what's going to happen right now? Okay, we're at the bottom of the market, I guess. Nobody knows, but I guess we are. But there's other stuff that's happening, and you got miner pressure. The miners have sell pressure right now, and what if they dump? Well, first of all, I think that at this point, and I couldn't take it, but that at this point, the miners that are left operating right now are doing what you and I spoke about a little while back. And that is, they're looking at their operation, they keep the operation running as an investment into the ecosystem. So the guys that are left over right now, this is not just just dollar for dollar type of stuff. It's not just about, okay, where can I get the most profit out, right? Because I mean, at this point, pretty much all POW chains are just not profitable to mine. So at this point, the miners that are left over are the ones that are investing in the future. And so I think that these guys are a lot more resilient now. And so, these guys are just going to wake up in the morning and say, screw this, I invested all this money into this, but I'm just going to dump. I just don't see that happening in this, I guess, in this point in time on any significant scale.
I think a lot depends on how over leveraged these, various actors are. If they've already covered costs on equipment, their carrying costs are lower because they've already covered the cost of equipment. And I think there's a lot of miners that came through this last cycle that paid off all of their equipment. It does irk me a little bit that you have miners that migrated from ETH. And the biggest issue with ETH was you had this small set of overlords that said, this is what they're doing, and the miners had no say, right? And then they come to Ergo where they actually have governance. They actually have the ability to have independent power. And they say, Mr. King, please fix it. Like, that just makes me want to cry.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's, I don't want to bring up such an extreme analogy, but I mean, that's what happens with being abused. Sometimes when you take somebody out of an abusive situation, they lapse because they just don't know what to do when they're not being abused anymore. And they look for somebody to get back to a place that they understand. And I think that's what's happening with some of these miners that kind of made it sound like that, because they were getting, abused for so long by Big Daddy ETH, that when they were taken and then put into an ecosystem where they do have say, like they were supposed to with ETH, they just don't know what to do with it. Like, so what do? We don't have Big Daddy ETH telling us how it is. It's it's kind of like that one part. Yeah. So sorry, go ahead, Joe.
I said they have to take responsibility. I'm nobody's sugar daddy. They have to take responsibility. You have the ability as a miner to update a variety of parameters. You have the ability to submit reference clients and potentially fork the chain. That is your business, right? And please use that in a way that supports you as a business operator, but also supports the network and provides some economic incentives for developers to build frameworks on top of the network. But I would love to see that become independent, where people don't even ask me that question. They just take responsibility.
It's about self-responsibility. You're in a distributed network. You're in you're supposed to be in a trustless environment, right? So while you can hope for people to have ethics, hope for people to be intruders, you should you're responsible. Ultimately, you are responsible.
It's the same as the governance token. It's the exact same scenario, right? Like, people want to say, okay, I want to trust you, right? That's not the point. That shouldn't be the point, is, I want to find a team I can trust so I can buy the governance token and just make some money. No, if you're going to buy a governance token, you should have governance power, right? As a miner, you have governance power. I would love to see, a spirited debate, discussion, in terms of what's coming, because collectively the community is smarter than me. Collectively, the mining community is smarter than me, and I would love to see that mind share grow and, become more active, engaged, involved, and ultimately run the network. That's what it was designed for.